There's a pretty one, Ulysses. There it is.
Hello, BookTube. I'm Sean the Book Maniac. Welcome back to my channel and another Friday Reads. It's a sunny day, so I'm sitting by the patio door, and it's warmed up here compared to, I think, my last weather report, which was minus 50 with the wind chill. It's now maybe around minus 5 or something. I didn't check, but it's comparatively balmy. I'm also happy to report that my dad is recovering very well. He's been home for a week now, and he's coming along really great. So that's the most important news, absolutely, and we're all really happy. I've had a really literary, biblio-adventurous week, TM, the book cougars, with my foibles mixed in as per usual. So I interviewed on Wednesday, which was my birthday. Thanks for wishing me happy birthday. Elvin James Mensah, the author of Small Joys. He was on my channel a few weeks ago, and you've heard me evangelizing about how wonderful his debut novel Small Joys is. And so I had a long chat, 50 minutes, 45 minutes, with him about that. But 5 minutes before the interview started on Zoom, I was just putting the finishing touches on my beautifying rituals, and I gashed my cheek with my, I was shaving. And it wouldn't stop bleeding, and it didn't stop bleeding for the entire duration of the interview. So there I am on Zoom with a Kleenex up to my chin while we're having this really incredible conversation. Anyway, quote-unquote master editor that I am, when I come to edit that video, and I hope to put it up on my channel in the coming, 2 or 3 weeks from now, I'm just going to focus I'm just going to crop me out of the entire video so you can hear my voice, but you can see the lovely Elvin James Mensah and not see me try to stanch my wound during the conversation. These things always happen to me. Yesterday was just overflowing with bookish goodness. I went to David Carpenter's house and taped another chat with him. That was our third chat. You haven't seen the second one yet, which will come maybe in the next week. And I'm going to space them out, 6 weeks or 8 weeks between them going forward. But taped another one with David, and that was fantastic. And then I came home on the bus and had a nap, and then had a fabulous conversation with this week's mystery guest. You'll meet that person in just a minute. And then in the evening, Mom and I went to the Saskatoon Public Library downtown, where the incredible Métis Cree writer and elder and storyteller and activist Maria Campbell gave a reading, and it's the first one I've ever attended where it was her reading and telling stories. I worked with her a tiny little bit in the early 90s. I ran into her at the library. Here's the picture she graciously let me take that day, but I never saw her perform, and I'm choosing the verb perform purposefully because, oh my God, was it riveting. When you meet her or when you see her in other situations, she's quite quiet, almost subdued, comes across kind of unsmiling. But when she is in front of an audience, oh my God, she just was a goddess of humor and wisdom and storytelling prowess. Mom and I were just bedazzled by her. And it was held in the art gallery, a little art gallery the library has now on the second floor. And by the time we arrived 30 minutes early, there was only a few seats left, so they kept bringing in more chairs and people were sitting on the floor. It was, I don't know, I'm not good at guessing crowds, 200 people in there. She is 83. She could have gone all night. And she talked about the tradition of Métis storytelling. She grew up in the Prince Albert area in the 40s and 50s when Métis people kept getting expelled from places that they were living because the government, in their eminent wisdom, wanted to make a park for all the white people. And many Métis communities ended up settling on the road allowance, which is the strip of land that the government sets aside to make roads. And sometimes they don't get around to building the roads for a while. And they became known as the Road Allowance People. And that was how Maria Campbell grew up. And she talked about Métis storytelling sessions that would not only go one night, but would go 6 nights with various storytellers continuing the story. And she tired us out because it was so stimulating, and the chairs weren't that comfortable after about an hour and a half. She could have gone, she never sat down, she could have gone for hours It was wonderful. So if you don't know, the first anything I read by her was her incredible memoir, Halfbreed, and did it as an audio text combo, which I really recommend because she reads the memoir. And you must get the updated edition. I think it's 2019 because in the original 1970s, they wouldn't publish the 2 pages where she talked about being raped by an RCMP officer, a police officer, when she was a teenager. And that's been restored into the updated edition. And I read this, and she also read from this book that she translated and edited, Stories of the Road Allowance People, and this is the revised edition. And she has translated them from Mishif and Cree. They're oral stories. And I had trouble understanding some of them because of the dialect. But not when she read. She read one and it was just incredible. So I need to have a look at this book again and somehow find a way to get the audio version onto digital file so that I can follow along with it, because that was also incredible. She has more work coming out in the next year or two, and she's done stuff that I didn't know about. She was fiercely outraged about various things going on with Indigenous genocide, and talked about that in a way that she has such a succinct way of making linkages between various kinds of oppression, and I was blown away by the way that she could go from 1 minute being really, really funny to the next minute being incredibly ferocious about hate crimes against Indigenous people in Canada, which still occur, and which certainly she grew up in fear of. So, wow. What a treasure she is, and she's still going strong. So that was just one of the most incredible literary events I've ever been to, and my mom felt the same way. So that's my personal biblio-adventurous type news. And boy, am I excited for you to meet this week's mystery guest. So this week's mystery guest is the writer Meredith Hambrock, who is not only a novelist and a screenwriter, but she's also the current reigning, shall we put it that way, the current reigning writer-in-residence at the Saskatoon Public Library. Please welcome Meredith Hambrock. Hello, Meredith.
Hi, thanks for having me. Oh, you said raining. I feel like I should get a crown or something.
Yes, well, I'll dust one of mine off and give it to you. I found out about Meredith at this Word on the Street Literary Festival in Saskatoon. She was on a panel with Jerem Butala, who is no stranger to viewers of my channel, talking about what was the actual topic of that panel. It was a really fascinating discussion, but I don't remember was there an actual specific topic?
They didn't really give us a specific topic. It was just
Yeah.
they just kind of paired us up because I think they thought it would be a fun combo.
And it very much was. And so Meredith's debut novel, Other People's Secrets, was published in 2022. And you are not from Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. So tell us how you came to be in Saskatoon.
Oh boy. So yeah, I grew up in Toronto and then I moved to Vancouver when I was 18 to attend the UBC creative writing program. And I stuck around there for a while and ended up working in television, but I was always writing novels on the side and writing short fiction and stuff like that. And I think it was 2015 or 2016, I came to the Sage Hill Writers Retreat to work with Miriam Toews, which was such a amazing, transformative experience for my fiction writing career. Yes. Yeah, it was just after she'd published all my Puny Sorrows, and I just love that book so much. And
Me too.
yeah, it's just like I think about that book all the time. It made me a little nervous to move to the prairie winter, honestly, because there's some really funny descriptions in that book of people falling down the riverbank in Winnipeg and stuff like that. But yeah, that was just I had such a wonderful experience there. I made so many friends, just really loved the writing community. And I think it was only like 10 days or 2 weeks, but so it stuck with me. And so we had kind of finished writing Quarter Gas Animated, and I was, my book had come out, and I was sort of trying to figure out what to do next. And I saw the writer in residence position come up at the library here. And I don't know, my feet were getting kind of itchy. So I applied and was really lucky to get to come here and get to be part of this really awesome writing community again.
So just so I'm clear, Miriam Toews taught a writing workshop in Saskatoon?
Yeah, I know. I don't know how it all came together, but it was so cool. And there was, I think, 6 of us in our cohort, and we all were working on novels. And she read pages and kind of talked to us about our writing and gave us feedback and stuff like that. And it was just really, really cool. She was just really laid back, confident, funny. I was 27, 28 at the time, and I'd been working in TV comedy. So I think I was always trying to be kind of funny. And she kind of schooled me a little bit on how to not piss people off, I guess, a little bit with jokes and off-color jokes and stuff. But I just remember her being such a wonderfully smart, engaged, and just really caring person. And I think that all kind of comes up in her work, right? It's she's exactly
Absolutely.
the way you think.
Let's just make it very clear at this juncture, Meredith, that off-color jokes are very welcome in this discussion.
Oh, perfect.
I want to hear what it's like to be the writer in residence, but first, tell us about Other People's Secrets.
Yeah, so Other People's Secrets, I've got this is one of my advanced reader copies here. It's a novel about this very off-color young woman in her kind of late 20s named Baby. And she lives and works at this crumbling resort in sort of this imagined lakeside town in it's sort of based on Canadian cottage country. And the resort is really kind of on its last legs, but when it gets purchased by a new owner, Baby decides she's going to search for sunken treasure in her lakeside town in an attempt to help change her fate. But the search ends up putting her on the wrong side of their small town drug kingpin. So there's a lot of kind of scamp energy in this, I like to call it. There's some dark comedy, but what people have been saying is they love the characters, that I'm a real character-driven writer. So they say the characters leave off the page. And I think my favorite sort of review sort of feedback I got was someone said it was like if Gillian Flynn, who wrote Gone Girl, if she rewrote Dirty Dancing, the movie, so and put it into a thriller. So that's kind of the vibe we're going for.
And there's an interesting story that we won't take the time to share here about how that it got marketed as a mystery slash thriller, but you didn't really start out writing that way. And it's a way of introducing the fact that I have a bit of an allergy to reading mystery. And I don't think the word mystery was mentioned when you talked about it at the festival in the summer. And I thought, oh, that sounds good. And then doing some more reading today, that's mystery. What am I doing having a mystery writer on my channel? I never read mysteries. But the more you've talked about it, it does sound like a real character driven coming of age story. So it's probably going to be a gateway for me.
I hope so. I mean, what I'll tell you is that I love mysteries, but I also am not that person who can like outwit anybody, I think, with my clues and my, little sneaky tidbits and stuff like that. So you really are like when I write, I'm really kind of sending a character on a journey. And the book is called Other People's Secrets because Baby, the main character, learns a lot of secrets that she'd sort of been almost like avoiding, I think, learning about her life in her town. So that's kind of where the mysteries come in. It's like people are the mysteries, I think, maybe a little bit in my approach here.
And that sounds very interesting. But I bet you could outwit me in a heartbeat, Meredith.
I don't know.
I would like to read one sentence from the New York Times book review. Pretty good to get your debut novel reviewed in the New York Times. And this is the sentence that's
Yes,
on
I
your
know.
website. Baby schemes often blast beyond harebrained to the borderline delusional. But when you've got a character this audacious, this fabulous, it hardly matters.
Yes, I know. I was so nervous when I heard that was coming out. And I will say that I think she's spot on with that. There's a little bit of a critique in there, but I just love writing about women who almost are full of audacious hope, I guess. And I think some people might read that as delusional, but that's always what I'm drawn to with my female characters.
So, what does the job of being a writer in residence entail, and how's it going so far?
Oh, it's going really well. I've just been so enthralled and entertained and moved by all the writing that I get to read because that's a really big part of the job. So if you live in Saskatoon, you can go on the library website and there's a little page with that where it says writer in residence and there's contact information for me and you can in fact send in your writing. So there's some submission guidelines. I usually take, I think, up to 25 pages of fiction. I think I say like 3 to 5 poems, maybe, or up to 35 pages of drama. and I will read it, and you can come into my office, or we can set up a Zoom call or a phone call, and I can give you some feedback and help you improve it. And I think this works really well, especially for folks who have specific questions or things that they want to improve in their writing. But I've also just answered questions people have about screenwriting, television writing. We've talked about publishing, kind of different publishing avenues. I've helped people with what's called a query letter, which is something that you write when you finished a novel and you want to try and find an agent or a publisher. I've given people advice about just almost like networking in the writing community and building communities. So yeah, it's been really, really interesting because everybody's different. Every writing career is different and every pathway is different. I've done some school visits. I've talked to some seniors groups. And yeah, just like if you have a writing group, I can come and visit and talk to you, answer questions. And I'm going to be doing a few events up at the University of Saskatoon, or Saskatchewan, sorry, University of Saskatchewan in February and March, which I'm looking forward to as well.
Give us an idea of what these workshops topics are. A couple of ones you've done recently or a couple of ones coming up?
Yeah, so in the fall, I did kind of a two-parter, and it was just introduction to screenwriting. So anybody who was just sort of interested in seeing what a screenplay looked like, kind of how they functioned, what people use them for, because they are kind of weird to look at. So I just kind of talked through the basics with people over 2 weekends. And then I just recently did a writing the half-hour TV comedy kind of 2-hour workshop. So folks would come in and we looked at some scripts, and then we talked about how you come up with episode and story outlines. And I'll be running workshops about narrative structure, about editing and revising, writing for animation, and getting published as well. I'm doing one of those at the end of February. So if anybody out there would like advice about publishing, we'll be doing kind of an evening workshop.
You have lots and lots of experience writing TV screen. What is it called? Screenwriting when it's for TV? I'm pretty stupid about the terminology, but
I actually like, because you call it a screenplay, but then I think people just say TV writing. So I have a lot of experience writing for television in the form of screenplay, I guess.
Yeah.
But even I don't know, and I've taught it. So
and Corner Gas is one of the ones that you've done. And you mentioned just earlier in this chat the animated Corner Gas, and that I don't know about. Can you fill me in?
yeah, so I wrote for the animated reboot of Corner Gas, and this was something that came about, I think it first aired, I'm going to say 5 years ago, maybe 6 years ago. And this was purely just based on the fact that they did 6 seasons of the live action series, had a huge, obviously hugely popular, successful show, totally beloved. Everybody loved it. It did so well around the world too. Anybody who lived in a small town all over the world could just relate, which is super fun. And then they did the movie, and the movie I think blew up in theaters. They had to continue the run. Initially I think it was just going to be 2 or 3 weekends, and then they had to extend it because of the demand. They kept selling out. And so that was when I think they realized just that, well, people want more Corner Gas. I think on the creative side, what I was told, I wasn't involved in the development of the animated series. They were like, well, we have more story ideas we could do. And if we do animation, you can do kind of weirder stories. You can go off on kind of, into sort of dreamland kind of tangents and stuff like that. You can use animals and have quirkier and more unique plots because it's a drawn universe. So the rules are a little bit different. Gravity doesn't have to exist, for example, and that kind of things. And Brent has also always loved to draw. He's really, really talented at drawing.
Sorry,
And I
who's
think
this?
Brent Butt.
Oh, Brent Butt.
Yeah, so he created Corner Gas, and he's obviously the lead and is the head writer and the showrunner. And so he initially, I think, just loved, when he was a kid, loved comic books, loved drawing cartoons. I think at one point he went to animation school, but I think he dropped out to do stand-up comedy. So they decided to develop Corner Gas animated, and then we were super lucky to get to do 4 seasons. And I started in season 1 as it's called the story coordinator. So you're sort of the lowest level writer in the room / assistant. And then I got to work my way up and got to co-write lots of episodes with Brent Butt, and I got to co-write with a live action writer, Andrew Carr, and then I got to write a bunch of my own also later on. So it was a really, really fun experience for me.
That's very exciting. Wow.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that there was an animated series at all. If I want to watch it, how can I do that in 2024?
Yeah, so it airs
Streaming
on
somewhere?
CTV. It airs on CTV Comedy, and I think it
Okay.
streams on CTV Comedy or on Crave as well.
Okay.
And then I think also if you have American fans who check in here, because I know Corner Gas has some American fans. I believe it's on Amazon Prime.
Okay.
Yeah.
You said your heart is in fiction. So do you think you'll do more TV writing in future, or are you going to specialize in fiction or other kinds of writing? And that's kind of a segue question into what are you working on now, Meredith?
I mean, I love working in television and I love the collaborative element of working in television. And particularly, I love being an employee in television. So I love when a showrunner hires me to help them make their show great. I love collaboration and pitching and writing in other people's voices. I don't know if I can sell a TV show. I've certainly tried. I have an agent and I have some folks that I'm collaborating with on a few projects that I don't think I can talk about, but and I've worked a bit in development, but when it comes to the personality of selling a TV show to a network, I don't know if that's in the cards for me or not. It's so hard. It's such a competitive industry. So I'm not counting it out, but I just find when it comes to personality, I love like my personality. I'm a bit of an introvert and I love writing books. And then I give them to my agent and she sells them for me. So
Yes,
there's
yes,
a
yes.
bit of a handoff there. And not all of them sell, but at least I don't have to, be the guy.
And so, are you working on anything, another book now, or one in the coming down the pipe?
Yes, I just handed in my edit, which I think I might have to do another small round, but my second book is coming out in 2025
Mhm.
with a Canadian publisher called ECW Press. It is going to be upmarket literary fiction, I believe. So it's not really a crime novel, but it's still a character-driven novel
You wrote it
about.
for me.
I did, yes, I knew you were out there. Um, but yes, it's still a character-driven novel, and it is about she's a struggling young actress who is desperate to be a musical theater star. And when she's passed over for the role of Maria in a production of The Sound of Music and is instead asked to be the childminder for the kid actors in the show, she decides she wants to steal the lead role by any means necessary.
Oh my God.
So it's
Sounds
still that,
incredible.
yes, it's quite unhinged, I guess is what I've been telling folks, because it's a little more, it's first person, it's very psychological, and it's really about this woman's intense desire and how it is maybe perhaps her undoing.
Holy smokes. Well, I definitely want to pre-book you to come back and tell us about that when we get closer to the publication date. That sounds amazing.
Absolutely. Yes, yeah, we're aiming for spring 2025 because I believe it's the 60th anniversary of the Sound of Music film coming out. So we're gonna throw our crazy little my weird little book into the mix.
Working title, A Thread Pulling Needle.
It's called She's a Lamb, which is
She's a
a for
lamb.
do you know the song How Do You Solve a Problem Like Maria?
I definitely do.
So one of the lines is she's a darling, she's a demon, she's a lamb.
That
So it's a bit
is
of a wink,
much,
I think.
much better than my working title. I,
Wow.
I wish you every success with the book. And speaking of books, what have you been reading lately?
Oh my gosh. I think one of my favorite books that I've read recently is called We Meant Well, and it's by Erum Shazia Hasan, and it was on the Giller long list. And
I've
it's
heard about
it's a
it.
really yeah, it's really good. It's a very propulsive literary. It has a little mystery to it, but I wouldn't call it a mystery novel. And it's about a woman who she works for an aid organization in the developing world, but she hasn't been back to it's kind of in a made up country, I think, to not be gross about it. And she's called back there when there's kind of an allegation of abuse by one of the aid workers against someone who lives in the town. So she has to go and kind of untangle what happened. But it's a really interesting novel, and the author I think has a lot of experience working in this world. So She brought a lot of really unique details that I think you would only know from having lived it. Yeah, I just thought the characters were really interesting and well drawn, and the setting was unique, and it kind of asks some big questions, but still has that really kind of great propulsive writing of like a thriller almost. And I wanted to mention No Man's Ghost by Jason Powell. And this is it's written by a New York fireman. And it's basically it's kind of like it's a again like a more, I would say, a little more upmarket crime novel, something with it's a bit more character driven. There's a lot of compassion brought to it, and it's about a fireman's first week on the job, while they're dealing with a serial arsonist in his kind of neighborhood. And it was just like a really he really brings you into the firehouse, but it's kind of wholesome. Like it's not gritty or anything like that. It's just sort of it's fun, but again, you get that kind of lived experience and all those little details that I think can make the worlds of these of thrillers and mysteries maybe a little more kind of juicy, I guess. So maybe another one to consider
Another
as
one
I suck
sounds,
you in.
yeah,
to
you're doing a great
this.
job so far. It helps that I
And
was a firebug when I was a kid, and I wanted to be a firefighter so I could be around fire at all times.
oh, well, there you go. This is like, and this covers both sides of that, the compulsion to
That's
set
right.
fire, and I think the compulsion
Put
to
them
put it
out.
out. Yeah, exactly. And I think something that I love too is it kind of gets into the mindset of first responders, people who sort of, choose like a life of service that can be kind of high drama. And it's a really interesting voice and something that like a tone that I don't see in a lot of kind of thrillers and mysteries and
And is
that
it quite
I've
a recent novel?
this one came out in 2023. I actually got to blurb it, so my name is on the jacket. I just love books that are sort of unique and stand out a little bit.
So it would seem, yes. And you like
Thank
writing
you.
them too.
Yes, I do. Yeah, I'm always looking for my people, I guess. But yeah, you read Zoe Whittall. I'm sure you must have heard of Zoe
I
Whittall
have
before.
not. It's crazy that I
Oh,
haven't,
really?
but I'm certainly familiar with
Oh,
her. Know
yeah,
about
Zoe
her. I've heard
Whittall.
her speak.
Yeah, she's very funny. She's also worked a lot in Canadian comedy. Our paths have never crossed, though. She's mostly worked, I think, on the East Coast. But she's written a ton of novels that I've really enjoyed. But this one, it's a really it's called The Fake. And it's a really kind of quick, propulsive read that looks at sort of like a con artist almost. It's a woman who is sort of maybe it alternates in point of view between a woman who is reeling from the death of her partner, and a guy who is going through a breakup, and how they're both sort of potentially maybe being preyed upon by a maybe con artist. But I don't want to spoil it because it's quite an undoing. But it really takes like I think a really kind of human approach to a maybe con person, and it really kind of explores that compulsion, I guess, people have to lie, which I thought was really interesting.
Well, I'm getting a picture of what draws you in as a writer and a reader, that there's something you like stuff that's a little bit wacky, but you want the human depth of character and somebody to empathize with as well. And that's kind of my sweet spot too.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like in Canada especially we're lucky because there's so many books here with like beautiful writing, so many people who take craft so seriously here. And it's made me sort of spoiled when I go out in the world reading because I'm always expecting that depth of all the time, like great sentences and beautiful prose, and but I also want interesting plotting and storytelling as well. I also really love this, and I'm sure a lot of folks have heard of romantic comedy by Curtis Sittenfeld. But Curtis Sittenfeld is an author I've been reading, again, with a bit more of a literary sensibility, but she brought this to the idea of a romantic comedy. And she focuses on it's a woman who's written for a Saturday Night Live-esque sketch, kind of late night show. And it's kind of about her romance with a dreamy musician who comes on. Really just, I think, got a lot of the details right. It seemed really, really well researched from what I know about Saturday Night Live. She seemed to really understand, I think, comedy writing in an interesting way, but it still kind of had like a dreamy romance at the heart of it. So it has that escapism, but it was really grounded as well.
Yeah, I hadn't heard so much about that. It's her most recent one, isn't it?
Yes, yeah. I think this one it's also the first book that I've read that has the pandemic as a plot point. But it's not an over the top exploration of the emotional experience of it. It was more just like this is why I'm like living maybe I'm not living in New York right now because I had to go home for XYZ reason. So I found that to be an interesting approach because I know some folks, when they hear about, they just don't want to think about lockdowns and stuff like that.
And I'm not like that. Like I loved Louise Erdrich's The Sentence, which has a big part of that story happens in the pandemic. That was one of my top reads of the year that I read it. I haven't read much Curtis Sittenfeld yet, but I did read one of her short stories. It was in Best American Stories for a certain year,
Okay.
and it made maybe buy the collections.
Oh, okay.
It was a wonderful short story with a really queer theme that
Oh,
just
cool.
I just thought was amazing. And I will find that story and put it in the show notes for people to look up. And
Yeah.
it's part of, I think, her collection. If you think it, I'll say it, or whatever that one was called.
Oh, yeah. That's one that I haven't checked out yet, but yeah, now I think I'm going to have to.
You are incredibly talented and really interesting to talk to. You're also hilarious. So, have you ever thought of doing comedy, stand-up comedy?
Oh my gosh. No, thank you. That's really nice of you. You know, I've like hung out with a lot of comedians just in my work, and
Absolutely.
I so admire the hustle and the talents that they have. But I just don't want to go to comedy clubs all the time. I think, when you think about, sometimes I think, what's the work that you have to do? And it's a lot of, I think, driving around to unsavory basements and, having people not laugh at you, I think is how you become a good comedian, which is what I've sort of been told. So I love being at home and reading and
Oh,
putting it on the page.
and Meredith, I could talk to you all day. Will you come back?
Oh, yes, please have me. This is so much fun.
Meredith. She's a ball of fire. Holy smokes, I'm going to be following her literary career, and I'd love to go for coffee with her. She's just a lot of fun, isn't she? And here is the week in review.
They're all kind of like auto-fiction-y. I find them very unappealing, so I can't say that I would read often things like this. And Exciting Times I didn't like, actually.
Let's start with that then. And
her parents were communists. I should start there. Josie and Sam were communists during the 1950s, the American Red Scare, which was a tough time to be communist. They had 3 children. Zan, who was the youngest and who I talked about, Carol, who was the oldest and who grew up with an allergy to politics. Her sense was, this is not safe, I want no part of it, and leave me alone.
The original meaning in English and in French was a tuft or plume of feathers, especially as a headdress or on a helmet. And I've got some pictures of some Roman panache helmets, and they are fabulous. All right, so this week, with everything that going on, and so many things that I had scheduled for the week previous when Dad was in hospital, I rescheduled to this week. This week has been insanely busy. I haven't got a lot of reading done, but I have finished one book, and I am going to start one book, and that's what I'm going to talk to you about. The book that I finished was on audio, and I started reading it 6 months ago. Goodreads tells me, and I have finally finished it, and what a tour de force it was. It is the American novel of the Vietnam War, Matterhorn by Karl Marlantes. Originally published in 2009. For some reason, I thought it had been published earlier than that. It was about a unit of soldiers during the Vietnam War, and it did not take any kind of a patriotic, the Vietnam War was a good thing type of tone. There was various opinions amongst the soldiers about the wisdom of what they were doing or how utterly banal and evil what they were doing was, and that I really appreciated that. There was so much about race relations between the black soldiers and the white soldiers that was a whole other layer of the story that was just incredibly well done, especially for a white writer. And when you read it, you must do it on audio. The audio is narrated by one of my favorite audio narrators, Bronson Pinchot, and he does voices and accents brilliantly. So each character has their own accent and voice that you can recognize, and he's doing them all. The basic storyline is that near the Laos border in Vietnam, the higher up commanders or whatever they are, I don't know any of the terms, I don't ever want to learn them, but the higher up folks, they had this unit fight to take the top of a mountain, and it was nicknamed Matterhorn, but it was a mountain in Vietnam that they would be used as a base for something or other. And so there's a ferocious battle to take that from the other side, the North Vietnamese, and then the higher ups decide, oh, we don't want it anymore, so they had them leave it, and it was taken over again by the North Vietnamese, and then they decided, 10 minutes later, oh no, we do want it. And so many American soldiers were killed, never mind how many dozens, hundreds of North Vietnamese soldiers. And that's also something that's really treated well. You get right into the heart of how American soldiers felt about taking the quote-unquote enemy's lives, the soldiers on the other side, and some really poignant, horrible stuff is told so vividly that it just rips your heart out. Karl Marlantes is based it on his own experience in Vietnam, and it's his first novel. I can't believe it's a debut novel because it's a classic of war literature. I don't have the words to say much more than that. It bowled me over and left me speechless. I'm glad I took as long as I did to take it in, because I think if I'd read it any faster, it might have caused me dire emotional issues. I needed to really pace myself with this one, but it was incredibly powerful. Speaking of audiobooks, I forgot to tell you last week that I was going to start an audiobook, just because, I didn't have anything in my hand or written down or to remind me. But I did start the audiobook, and I didn't get very far, so let me tell you a little story. I started the audiobook of my first Graham Norton novel, and I believe it's his most recent one. It's called Homestretch 2020. He may have something that else that's come out since then, but it's one of his more recent ones anyway. And I have been interested in trying a Graham Norton novel for longer than I've been a Graham Norton fan. But in the last, I don't know what's been going on for me, that I've just suddenly become addicted to watching the Graham Norton show on YouTube. And I have watched hours and hours of it. Over the years, I've watched this clip and that clip because I was interested in who was being interviewed, but I never really got into the show as a show or appreciated Graham Norton's genius as the show host. He's really the best. There's nobody in North America that holds a candle to him in making such a fun, entertaining show and getting under the persona of celebrities and having them tell stories that just are usually, pee my pants funny. His star guest is Miriam, who I have also developed a bit of an addiction to in watching so many clips of hers. I've watched pretty much every appearance that she's had on the Graham Norton show at least twice, and now I want to start reading her books, but she just cracks me up. Talk about no filter. So they're a great pair, those two. So if you don't know who I'm talking about, Graham Norton is he's Irish and lives in London, and he does this British talk show, and has in the last 10 or 15, I don't know how many years, he started putting out, I think he's put out 3 novels, and I've heard them all described as very different from his persona, from how he is on the show. They're very kind of quiet and reflective and stuff. So I thought, oh, that sounds interesting. It sounds like a Sean book, potentially. So I got out the audiobook for Homestretch, and he narrates the audiobook, which is marvelous. And the story opens with a terrible car accident, although it may have been some kind of foul play, I don't know, and we get the perspective of about 6 different characters who are all in their individual homes near the scene of the accident, and they're somehow connected to the people that have been killed or seriously injured in the accident. And it goes from this character who has obviously a name and a whole little background story and this in the first 8 minutes. And I thought to myself, this is not a book that Sean the Book Maniac can do on audio only, because there's way too many characters already. I just don't have that kind of a head. So I stopped listening to it, checked the library, and they had a physical copy. So I now have the physical copy of Homestretch, and I'm going to do it as my infamous audio text combo. So that's that. That's my report for this Friday. Thanks for watching.